Great. We're in the last part, guys. Last part of the exercise. On the last exercise, we're going to send packet pairs to mimic API traffic. Okay. Now, we got to keep in mind there was a slide earlier on that was indicating the main components, right? So remember what I said. All traffic is going to go through Nginx. Based upon the path, Nginx is going to redirect the traffic. The other thing I'd like to mention is TLS ends at Nginx. This is where we're going to stop with TLS, and everything that is communicated to the active testing management and engine is um, decrypted. So we're able to see the actual values, right? We're able to see the actual values that are passed. Okay, keep that in mind. Good. All right, so let's begin on our terminal, right? Let's begin on our terminal. There we go. And I like to go to no name. I'm going to kill some of this. By the way, this active Hasura is still 0. That indicates to me there's a problem. Right? I will probably be going and checking the logs of this no name active Hasura, but because it's the active testing portion, it's not a big deal for our class. Okay? But if you see something staying at 0, you probably want to check the logs. Right? I'm going to show you how you check the logs momentarily. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this. And parenthetically, I think I know what the problem is. And I think it's fixed, right? Again, remember we're using version 328.20 TLS, which is a few weeks old now. So, okay, cool. Oh yeah, remember what I mentioned that if we idle for a long time here, we're gonna exit. So here it is. I exited the session. So I'm gonna go and do another SSH. Password, capital N, no name training, one exclamation. There we go. The reason why I want to do this is because I want to check some of the logs. And I'm interested in Docker PS. If I type Docker PS, and let me maximize because this is going to be a pretty large output. Let me reduce the font size a little bit. These are all the different containers, right? And the one we're interested in is the router. Router. Okay, this is the one. Now you can also do Docker PS grep router, and you're only going to get one of those. Right? You're only going to get one of those. And you're interested um, in the container ID, right? And let me increase the font right now. There we go. So what I'm interested in is type docker logs hyphen f the container ID of the router container, like this. And right now, here's all the logs. Right, if I scroll up a little bit, you will see that my sources were updated. This pretty much was done when I created my integration, right? So here's the Kong integration, here's the index, here's the source key. So you can actually see all that information from here too, right? We didn't have to go under the zip file for the Kong integration to find it, but hey, now you know two ways of tracking them down. And if we keep going, these are all the different aspects when we started when we first installed our no-name platform, right? So Docker, I'm sorry, the router needs to know what type of integrations actually are enabled and so on. Okay, so there's a lot of things that happen at the start. What is important to you to remember is that every time we detect a new integration, we're going to update the map of the router. Okay, so that the router maintains that map. If we don't locate, if we pass a source key that is not legit, that is not valid, we're going to start throwing errors, right? The telemetry that you see right here, every time you see just two curly braces, means there was no traffic whatsoever, no traffic whatsoever detected. Okay, that's what it means. Inside your manual, I do have a quick section where I show like a few of these. There's about half a dozen of these different types of um, fields that may appear that may appear if there's something to show inside these curly braces. And there is a fairly, I wouldn't say it's long, it's a fairly short explanation inside your manual, right? But at least you get to see them all, right? Not everything will be appearing here. Only the things that are valid will appear. And pay attention, the traffic, these gets updated every 30 seconds, right? The logs get updated every 30 seconds. Okay, good. So that's first step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send now one of those packet pairs using Postman, right? Using Postman. So I do have Postman open. Here it is. And I'm going to create a new request. Method is post because I'm going to be sending data. The URL is pretty much the URL for the integrated engine, right? Integrated engine. Where can I track that down? Well, you can find it under the Kong plugin one, or you can go under your no-name platform. Here we are, right? I'm not sure whether the engine has it. Yeah, actually it does. Here it is. Integrated engine, default engine. Here it is. And this happens to be identical to your path. EC2, 3, 140, 186, 172, right? That's exactly it. So you can get it from here too. Two spots. You can grab the URL and add /engine, or you can copy the whole thing under engines. So I'm going to copy, and I'm going to go back to my Postman, and I'm going to paste like this. So that's your URL, right? This is your URL. The request body should be JSON, raw. Make sure you select JSON. You can actually send something that is empty, right? Something that is empty. Okay. So if I click send, right? If I click send, you're always going to be getting the K back, right? You're always going to be getting K back. The difference is you're going to be getting 200, but nothing's going to be processed, right? If I go back to no name and I look at my telemetry, the telemetry is not going to show you that it got any traffic, right? Because it didn't. It's going to be thrown away. The traffic is invalid, right? Why bother all the other components, right, with traffic that doesn't exist, right? So you got to provide it with a request body. You got to provide it with a request body that at least resembles a packet pair because it's before it's processed. Okay. All right. So I need my Postman. Actually, I need my editor. There we go. I'm looking at the default engine, so I'm going to grab this whole thing. I'm going to go to my Postman and I'm going to paste it like this. And you may want to beautify it. There you go. Just gonna, and again, pay attention if you do this something with other than this packet pair. Make sure you don't have any issues. If there are like JSON issues, like if I remove this comma, Postman is gonna start complaining, right? You're gonna see a red something. You're gonna see underscore. So make sure you have an appropriate JSON, and make sure you have enough information, right? Make sure you have enough information, right? You need a request body and or a response body. If you have neither of these, probably you're not going to be able to log anything, right? If it's empty bodies, request and response bodies, there is a setting in the no-name platform that ignores those. You can turn it off if you like, but then you're going to pollute your inventory with stuff that you may not like. Okay, besides the point, digressing a little bit. So now I'm going to click send. And let me move things a little bit around. I'm going to click send, and let's pay attention to telemetry, right? Let's click send. I get the K again, but right now the telemetry should show me something, right? Should show me something. Again, we may need to wait 30 seconds, right? And the, not the engines, oops, but the integration. If I go back to integrations, right, this page should also get updated as soon as I see something out of my telemetry. There it is. So my telemetry tells me, right, that I see a message that contains exactly one packet pair. A message may be a collection of packet pairs, right? So message with number of packet pairs is a one-to-many relationship. Okay. In our case, to keep things simple, I only have a single packet pair inside the message. Okay. The happy path is every time you see total messages and push to nuts, right? The resource key absent, you can ignore it for the time being. It's still a happy path, right? It's still a happy path, right? The resource key absent, very recently, we have added additional elements to the packet pair, right? To the packet pair, which are not present in my packet pairs, okay? So if that value is built, the resource key is pretty much built by the integration at the source, and it decorates the packet pair. If it's missing, it's not going to complain, right? It's not going to complain. It's still going to log the traffic, okay? Now, if I go back to my traffic source, I want to point out that now I see a total request, right? Now I have a total request, 1. If I enable the engine, if I go to the columns, not the edit, and I enable the engine, and I move the engine somewhere right after the ID maybe, you will see that it's the default engine that actually receives the traffic, okay? That receives the traffic. If I give it enough time, if I go under inventory, right? If I go under inventory and I refresh, this may take, I don't know, a few minutes before it auto refreshes. If I refresh this page, within a minute or two, from the moment the traffic is detected, I should be able to see my API. Here it is. So now you see the pages that start rendering, right? Before I used to see, okay, go and set up an integration or upload a spec. If I go to the inventory right now, I see that I have one API. If I go under APIs, I'll see that I'm dealing with the acmeairline.com flights post, right? And we're still learning authentication. This is going to take a few extra minutes, right, to learn the authentication, to see that we're dealing with JOT. Learning, we're still learning. We have yet to satisfy all the learning hyperparameters, right? Like 7 days, 2,000 users. We're not even close to that, right? We're not even close to that. So learning is going to take some time. Again, more details on learning, NS201 and NS202. Right, so fair enough. Okay, well, I know now that if I want to make sure that I send a message and that message is received successfully, I have to check the router logs, right? The router logs. There is a step before that, right? There's a step before that, and this relates to the components, right? Remember, I receive everything encrypted at Nginx. Nginx is going to decrypt everything and is going to reroute the request to the engine, right? To the engine. In fact, it reroutes it to the router. So how can I see whether Nginx actually does the right thing and send things to the engine, right? How can I see this? To do that, I'm going to go to the one right below, the window right below. And as you can see, broken pipe, I timed out. So I need to SSH yet again. Thank you. No name training, one exclamation. There we go. And I need to sudo su. I'm going to switch to root because I'm going to use a command called TCP dump, right? TCP dump. Now I will tell you that the traffic, the traffic from Nginx to the router component of the engine goes through local port 8080, 8080, right? So that's the port I want to look at. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say TCP dump. The interface is the loopback interface. LO means loop back. And the port I'm interested to listen to is port space port 8080. And of course, I want to have everything displayed in ASCII like this. And right now, I'm listening to that network interface. Now there's additional commands like filters and so on with TCP dump, so you can look for something very specific, right? Because if you look for something for a specific integration, you probably want to create filters so you are listening just from that specific integration, especially if you have, I don't know, a few integrations in here and quite a bit of traffic, right? You can use the filters for specific APIs, right? I'm looking for something that has path URL, uh, I don't know, flights, right? And so on. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same exact thing like before. I'm going to go and send another packet pair. By the way, there are keep alive type different requests, so you may be seeing extra noise right here. You will know right away if everything works as expected, right? So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to click send. And right away, right, no latency, at least from the human eye, that is detected by the human eye at least, you will see that actually, here's my post, and here's the actual key, right? Here's the actual key. So the information actually arrive at the router. From Nginx to the router, that information arrives. So that's another way you can actually see whether information are arriving and what the structure looks like, right? Now sometimes, especially with Kong, the default behavior of Kong is to base 64 encode these packet pairs. So keep that in mind. So you may need to base 64 decode it, okay, by default. And here it is. After 30 seconds or so, we're going to get to see the actual telemetry. Now what I'm going to show you is what happens if I have an error, right? What's going to happen if I have an error in my details, right? So I'm going to go in here, back to my packet pair. I'm going to remove that 8. So I'm going to provide a malformed key, right? So I'm going to click send, and we're going to wait yet again 30 seconds. The response is K again, but right now you're going to get to see different types of fields being present. Again, we're waiting for those 30 seconds. There you go. So total messages, 1, invalid source key 1, right? So you're going to get very specific information on why it failed, right? It could be an invalid JSON structure. It could be an invalid packet pair. It could be a source that doesn't exist, right? It could be a source that doesn't exist. So if I go back and I restore my key, right, 8, and let's remove this index, let's say 11, right? So that index doesn't exist, right? So type index to identify unique integrations and then the key, right? So let's go and do send. Let's wait yet again, right? In 30 seconds to a minute, we should see a response. Again, the happy path, it's always total messages and push to nuts. Resource key absent, you can ignore, it doesn't really matter. Everything else, it's a problem. And again, because I'm sending a single message doesn't mean you're only going to get total messages push to nuts, right? Maybe my single message has 100 packet pairs. Maybe 50 of them were push to nuts and 50 they were invalid or they had a non-existing source like you see at this point, right? We don't have such an integration. What are you talking about, right? Again, look at your manual. There's more details in that. Page 13, 14. Okay, that's where you're going to see that information. Okay, good. So with this, we have concluded sending the packet pair in the integrated engine, and we can do the same exact steps for the remote engine. We can do the same exact step for the remote engine. So if I go back to the remote engine, right? Again, broken pipes and all that good stuff. So I have to re-SSH and relog in using no name training one exclamation, right? And I'm gonna do another docker ps grep router. It's the same type of an exercise, right? It's the same type of an exercise. So again, you have an nginx in case you don't remember, docker ps, right? I still have an nginx. Here it is, right? The nginx is going to receive all requests and then it's going to redirect, right? There's not much to redirect here other than maybe the router, right? So, but that's where things are going to go yet again. So the router is what we're interested in to make sure that we're actually receiving traffic. So docker logs -f, and here's my logs, right? Here's my logs. Now, what I'm going to do next for the sake of brevity, and again, I can do a TCP dump in here too, right? So I can go and say sudo su no name training one exclamation, right? So I'm in root. I can do TCP dump -i the loopback port 8080-a. Okay, so I can do the same exact thing. So we have the same exact um, result. All right, so I'm gonna go back to my browser, right? And I'm gonna go to my no name platform, right? And I'm gonna go back to my engines, and now I'm gonna send the request to training remote, right? That's what I'm gonna do. So here's my engine. I'm gonna copy this URL, copy, and I'm gonna head back to my Postman. All right, for Postman, I'm gonna create a new tab. I'm gonna paste that URL. This is my remote engine. It's a post yet again, right? And I need to specify the body. It's JSON. Okay, but this time I'm going to copy their remote engine. So I'm going to go back to my editor, kill this, go back to the remote engine packet pair, and copy this. That's what I'm interested in. Okay. And again, the difference is same exact thing. The difference is dev dot whatever. Okay, that's the only difference. I'm going to go terminal. Right, I need enough space in my terminal, and I'm going to send. Here it is. It arrived. I see it in the TCP dump output, and now I'm going to have to wait a few seconds until I see my telemetry. Okay. The other thing I like while we're waiting, the other thing I like to mention is what I just done should never be done. Why? Because I have one integration and I'm using two different engines to send the traffic off that integration. Okay. So you should never do something like this. This is no. I just did it for the sake of brevity, right? And to show you that the output, the debugging is exactly the same way. But the engine, the no-name engine, is a stateful application. That means it remembers information, right? It remembers information. So if you send traffic to one engine and the same traffic to another engine, right now you have two engines remembering part of the traffic, okay? Which is not good. You want to have always the same integration going through a single engine. If you choose to move that integration to another engine, yes, you can do it. But you first stop the traffic flowing through the old engine and you funnel it to the new. You can do that. But at the same time, you cannot have the same integration funneling traffic in two separate engines. Because the engine is a stateful application, my good people, right? It's a stateful application. Let's go back to the no-name platform very quickly, right? And I want to go and see under my integrations 3 requests in total. That's how many I have sent. And I'm going to turn on again the engine field colon. I'm going to move it all the way to the front. Now you can see that I have two engines. So there are ways you can see whether the traffic is coming from two different engines, right? The difficulty is, was this done, is this concurrent traffic going to this two separate engines, or the default engine was the old engine and then I moved my integration to the training remote, right? That's a more difficult question to answer. Okay. All right. And again, if I go under inventory, now I have two APIs. Go under APIs. Here they are. Dev Acme flights and Acme airline flights post and so on. Okay. As you can see, the initial one, it already had time to perform some analysis, so now it has a risk score and so on. We still don't know anything about learning authentication. This will take a few minutes. And probably it requires, I don't know, 2 days and 5,000 consumers before we nail down the authentication. Right? All right, guys. With this, we concluded the last section of the last exercise where we send API traffic and we try to see whether the traffic arrives and everything's happy. Okay. Exercise done. One more section where we're going to summarize and you're good to go.